the invisible thread between two souls. There's a reason why certain connections don't make sense. Not in the logical world, not on paper, not in the eyes of friends. But they make sense somewhere deeper. In a realm where time bends, where past lives echo, and where the soul recognizes what the mind cannot grasp. And if you're a Scorpio, you already know this. You don't meet people, you merge with them. And when someone enters your energy field in a way that pierces the surface, they don't just become a lover, a memory, or a fleeting lesson. They become a spiritual mirror. And that mirror doesn't flatter you. It doesn't show you what you want to see. It shows you your shadow. It reveals your healing. It exposes your longing, speaks in symbols, and it dares you to become more. This isn't a story about a breakup. This isn't even a story about heartbreak. This is a story about transformation that gets interrupted, a rebirth that gets stuck mid-labor, a soul contract that's still binding, but trembling under the weight of delay, fear, and avoidance. Tonight, we're stepping into one of the most mysterious kinds of Scorpio experiences, a deep cosmic connection where love exists, but is stuck in limbo, the kind of connection where one of you runs and the other one waits. One of you is emotionally present and the other spiritually terrified. One of you sees the truth and the other hides behind their mask. And yet the bond persists. Some call it a twin flame. Others say it's karmic. But to a Scorpio, it doesn't matter what name you give it. You feel it. You sense the current of destiny underneath. And you know this isn't ordinary. So before we begin, I want to ask you, have you ever loved someone so deeply that it felt like grief from the very beginning? That's the paradox Scorpio lives with. To love is to lose control. To merge is to risk annihilation. To hope is to betray the part of you that already surrendered in silence. But tonight, I want to honor that ache in your chest, not to fix it, not to heal it, not to name it, but to witness it, because the ache itself is proof that you loved real. This is the kind of story where someone is pretending not to care because they care too much, where words remain unspoken, but souls are still in conversation every single night in dreams. So take a deep breath, Scorpio. This isn't about rushing to a solution. This is about seeing clearly, because when the triangle breaks, when the sacred geometry of the connection begins to collapse, you are faced with a choice. Will you chase what is fading, or will you finally face your own evolution without needing their permission? Let's begin. Part 1. The echo of someone who never left. There's a strange stillness in the air, Scorpio. Not the calm of resolution, but the kind that follows a storm that never quite ended. You may be wondering why you're still thinking of them, why their energy still lingers in the room when no one is speaking their name, why certain songs hit you like a ghost brushing past your skin, why your dreams have started to feel more vivid than your waking life, because they keep appearing in them. This isn't just memory. This is spiritual residue, the energetic imprint of someone who hasn't truly left your soul. And the cards confirm it. The energy of the King of Pentacles rises now. Not the kind of passion that burns hot and fast, but the kind of presence that runs deep, like roots that stretch through time, unspoken promises and silent hopes. This person or this connection is not some fleeting curiosity. It was meant to anchor you, to teach you about commitment, not only in relationships but to your own worth. And whether you're in contact or not, their energy remains woven into the thread of your daily life. In the background, unshaken. This is the kind of connection that doesn't fade just because no one texts back. There's a stability here, or at least the potential for it. Perhaps this person wanted to show up for you, or you wanted to build something lasting with them, but life got in the way. Responsibilities, careers, families, timing, or maybe, just maybe, one or both of you simply weren't ready for the depth you saw in each other's eyes. But spirit is clear. They're still in your atmosphere. Whether you realize it or not, they're thinking of you. Your names are still etched in the same spiritual storyline, even if the chapters are paused. And that's the part that aches, isn't it? Because you feel them. You feel them like unfinished poetry, like a room you walked out of but forgot to close the door behind. So let's ask the deeper question now. If they're still here energetically, why does it still hurt? Scorpio, this is where your depth becomes your double-edged sword. You don't attach lightly. You don't half-love. You don't casually see where it goes. When you invest, it's with the intention of transformation. You don't love people for what they offer. You love them for who they become when their soul is cracked open next to yours. And this person, they cracked something open, but instead of staying, they froze, or fled, or faded. Not because they didn't feel it, but because they couldn't hold it. So what you're feeling now is not just longing. It's disrupted soul work. It's what happens when a connection that was meant to root got shaken. When two people meant to evolve together got caught in the gravity of fear. But listen closely. The soul doesn't forget what the mind tries to dismiss. Even if you're both on different paths now, their energy is still trying to resolve something with you. Whether consciously or in dreams, through signs or silent knowing. So don't question your depth. Don't gaslight your intuition. You're not obsessed. You're not weak. You're not imagining things. You're a Scorpio. And when you connect, it's soul deep. This isn't about wishing someone back. It's about honoring that part of you that knows what's unfinished. Because before anything can heal, it must first be fully acknowledged. Let's go deeper. Part 2. The unspoken heaviness that lives in the bloodline. Some burdens aren't chosen. They are inherited. Scorpio, what if I told you that the hesitation in your heart isn't just about this person, but about a wound much older than this lifetime? What if what's blocking your love story now is a story that began generations ago? The soul doesn't begin when we're born, and pain doesn't always start with our own hands. Often it lives in the bloodline, passed like a whisper, encoded into our nervous system, our attachment style, our fears of abandonment and unworthiness. And for Scorpio, the psychic sponge of the zodiac, that ancestral pain doesn't just pass through you. You absorb it. You embody it. You transform it. That's why this connection isn't just a romantic detour. It's a karmic crossroad. The energy we enter now is the archetype of the thief. Not the one who steals your wallet, but the one who steals your energy, your time, your sense of trust. But here's the paradox. In its light aspect, the thief archetype teaches you that no one can truly take what is already yours. Your worth, your soul, your voice. And yet, many Scorpios grow up in environments where their emotional wealth was stolen early. Through neglect, through betrayal, through parents who only offered love with conditions. So now, you feel the drain again. This person or the space between you may be echoing that exact wound. Not because they want to harm you, but because the cycle wants to be healed. There may be a third party. Not just a romantic rival, but a spiritual distraction. A job, a family obligation. A karmic tie that pulls them from you like a thread unraveling. And you feel it like a hole in your chest. But the deeper truth is this. They are not the thief. The past is. And then, as the contrast to this draining force, the priest energy appears. A symbol of sacred devotion, higher alignment, spiritual integrity. You've been asked to hold both. To love someone who might be stuck in their shadow, while you already live from your light. To believe in a connection so chaotic, yet so holy. To remain loyal to your own soul path, even if it means loving from afar. This is where Scorpio's strength becomes spiritual. Because while others run from discomfort, you lean into it. While others escape truth, you become it. You were never meant to have light love. Your heart is a cathedral. Your love is ritual. And you do not offer it to tourists. This person may not realize it, but you saw the parts of them they've hidden from the world. And in doing so, you awaken something. But not everyone is ready to be seen that clearly. The priest inside you wants to stay devoted. Not in desperation, but in soul integrity. But the thief inside them may still be trying to protect their wounds by pushing you away, withholding affection, or avoiding transformation altogether. So what now? You do not chase what drains you, but neither do you resent what cracked you open. Because the work that's happening now isn't only between you and them. It's between you and your lineage, you and your soul, you and the patterns that have lived in silence for far too long. You're not just healing a love story, Scorpio. You're healing a story that began before you even arrived on this earth. And in doing so, you become the first in your line to break it. Let that sink in. This isn't just romance. This is ancestral alchemy. Let's keep going. Part 3. The shadow side of love that refuses to die. Scorpio, if there is one card in the tarot that speaks your native tongue, it is death. But tonight, it doesn't come in its full power. It shows up reversed, muted, stifled, trembling behind locked emotional doors. This is not the energy of endings. It's the energy of what refuses to end, even when it should. What lingers in limbo. What cannot quite be buried, and yet isn't fully alive. You see, transformation is your territory. You were born under Pluto's domain, the planet of death, rebirth, and resurrection. You know how to let go. You know what it means to shed your skin. You know how to walk through hell and come back with sacred fire in your eyes. But this time, something's different. There's resistance. Not just from them, but maybe, if we're being completely honest, from you too. The love was real. The bond? Undeniable. But with that love came a truth neither of you were prepared to handle. Because real love, soul love, is not soft. It undoes you. It melts your defenses. Kills the masks. And in its place it demands truth, vulnerability, depth. And that, Scorpio, is terrifying, even for someone like you who thrives in intensity. When the death card appears reversed, it says, a transformation wants to happen, but someone is still clinging to the old. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's them. Maybe it's both of you, stuck between what was comfortable and what could be holy. Let's be honest, sometimes we hold on to pain longer than we should. Not because we like suffering, but because suffering feels safer than surrender. And for your person, the idea of letting this connection fully unfold might feel like a kind of ego death. To surrender to love means risking exposure, releasing control, dismantling the identities they've carefully built. And for you, maybe it means giving up the illusion that love can exist without risk, that you can keep your power and still merge, that you can stay in control and still be fully transformed. This is the threshold. And right now, someone is standing on it, but refusing to cross. Instead, they stay in between, not letting you in but not letting you go. And that, Scorpio, is where your torment lives. In the pause, in the half-light, in the place where love lives, but is never spoken out loud. But here's the truth you already sense. What doesn't evolve decays. What isn't surrendered becomes heavy. What is denied becomes distorted. You feel it, don't you? That weight in your chest isn't just missing them. It's the gravity of transformation that's being delayed. It's your soul whispering, we were supposed to change through this, but someone froze. Still, don't forget, even in reversal, the death card carries the promise of rebirth. This delay is not a denial. This blockage is not forever. But the more someone clings, the more painful the cracking open becomes. And Scorpio, you were never meant to live half dead. You are here to alchemize, to burn away the old self, to awaken what lies dormant, even if it means walking alone for a while. So ask yourself, what are you still holding on to? What would happen if you let the old version of this connection die, not to erase it, but to make space for what it could become? Sometimes the greatest act of love is letting the soul complete its death, so it can finally begin its rebirth. Let's keep going. Part 4. The fire they awakened but couldn't contain. There are some people who don't just enter your life. They ignite it. Not with loud declarations or perfect timing, but with one smile, one look, one effortless conversation that feels like home. And suddenly, the parts of you that were dim for years begin to burn again. Scorpio, this connection didn't start like wildfire. It began like sunlight peeking through the storm, slowly, tenderly, almost deceptively gentle. But once it touched your soul, it illuminated rooms within you that had been locked for decades. That's what the Sun card speaks to. Not just joy or passion, but vitality. A return to aliveness. The feeling of being seen, not for your achievements or image, but for your raw, radiant essence. And for someone like you, who is used to dwelling in the shadows, who has learned to hide your tenderness beneath armor and silence, being seen like that was terrifying, and beautiful, and unforgettable. This person didn't just walk into your heart, they unlocked it. And perhaps they didn't even know how deeply they were affecting you. Perhaps it started as a friendship, a soul bond without a name. But over time the lines blurred. You laughed harder. You let your guard down. You imagined what it would be like to let someone love you fully. And in doing so, you started to love yourself in ways you hadn't in years. That's the paradox. While you were falling for them, you were also coming home to you. They reminded you of your softness, your strength, your fire. And for a moment, it felt like destiny had finally arrived with open arms. But then, they backed away. Not because you weren't enough, but because you were too much, too true, too intense, too emotionally real for someone who still hadn't made peace with their own light. They wanted the warmth you radiated, but not the responsibility of holding it. They loved how you made them feel, alive, seen, elevated, but they couldn't match the frequency. Not yet. And so once again you were left staring at the sun, but with no one beside you to share its heat. It's a cruel irony, isn't it? To be lit up from the inside, only to find that the one who sparked the flame can't stand in the fire with you. But Scorpio, listen to me. Just because they couldn't stay, doesn't mean the fire was a lie. What you felt was real. What they awakened in you was yours all along. They didn't give it to you. They just reminded you it was there. And now that they're distant, now that the light feels dimmer, Spirit comes with this truth. Love yourself first. Not in the shallow way most people mean, but in the deepest Scorpio sense. Honor your essence. Protect your flame. Do not shrink to be lovable. Do not abandon yourself to be chosen. Because the most radiant parts of you should never be hidden to make someone else feel comfortable. Yes, they lit the match, but you are the fire. And fire does not beg to be understood. It burns. It transforms. It becomes the sun. Let's go deeper. Part 5, Between Impulse and Patience. Scorpio, there are moments when your heart feels like a battlefield. Not because someone is hurting you from the outside, but because two very different voices are at war inside you. One says, go. Say it. Tell them what they mean to you. Don't waste time, life is short. The other whispers, wait. Don't risk it. Protect your pride. What if they don't feel the same? It's like your soul is caught between Knight of Swords and Knight of Pentacles. One reckless and ready, sword drawn, truth bleeding from your lips. And the other grounded, composed, carefully measuring every step. This is the torment of loving deeply when the outcome is unknown. You want to rush in, not because you're impulsive, but because you feel the urgency of truth. When you love Scorpio, it's not casual. It's cellular, psychic. It presses against your ribs until you either speak or self-combust. But experience has taught you that intensity can scare people, that not everyone can handle the rawness of your emotion. So you hold back. You reread the messages you never sent. You imagine what could have happened if you just said how you felt. And then you bury it again like a love letter you wrote and never mailed. And all the while, the Two of Pentacles spins between your fingers. An emotional pendulum. Push or pull. Speak or stay silent. Stay or let go. It's not indecision because you don't care. It's indecision because you care too much. You're trying to protect your own dignity while honoring your heart. You're trying to stay poised while your insides scream. You're trying to be patient, but Scorpio, patience was never meant to feel like emotional purgatory. And what makes it harder? You sense they feel it too. You see the way their eyes linger just a second too long. You notice how their energy shifts when you enter the room, even if they pretend it doesn't. You feel the words they don't say burning just beneath their surface. It's not one-sided, but it's stuck. So what do you do when love is real but frozen? You stand in the middle of the storm. You juggle your longing with your logic. And you wait, not because you want to, but because the connection matters too much to fumble. And that's the burden of Scorpio. To feel so deeply and still choose restraint. To know the truth in your bones and still honor divine timing. To be ready for something now, while the other person is still learning how to breathe in your atmosphere. But hear this, just because you're silent doesn't mean you're passive. Your patience is not weakness. It's sacred restraint. And one day when the time is right, your truth will not need to be shouted. It will be felt. It will arrive like thunder after stillness, impossible to ignore. Until then, honor your internal balance. Trust that not every battle requires a sword. And remember, when the love is real, time is an ally, not a threat. Let's keep going. Part 6. When Scorpio's soul speaks in silence. There's a storm inside you, Scorpio. But no one hears it because on the surface you're calm, composed, almost too composed. You've mastered the art of appearing unbothered, while inside entire worlds are colliding. You see, the energy of the Eight of Wands is fast, fiery, and direct. It's that surge that says, I need to say this now. It's the desire to act, to move, to confess, to close the distance. But when this card is blocked, like it is now, it's like your wings have been clipped mid-flight. You want to move. You want to speak. You want to finally break the silence that has been suffocating your truth. But something or someone is holding it all back. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's their energy. Maybe it's divine timing. Or maybe you just sense in that mystical Scorpio way that they aren't ready to receive what you're carrying. So you hold it in. The words, the feelings, the clarity that's been building in your bones. But make no mistake, silence is not emptiness. Not for a Scorpio. Your silence is alive. It speaks volumes. It carries every unsaid, I miss you. Every why did you pull away? Every, I wish you would just admit what this is. And even if they pretend not to feel it, even if they've gone cold or distant, they hear you. Because a Scorpio's silence is a language of the soul. It's not passive. It's potent. It vibrates through the bond like a signal, felt more than heard. And that's what makes this moment so maddening. You know they feel it too. You know they sense your presence, your love, your ache. But they're not responding. Not out loud. And that's where the real tension lives. In the space between your emotional readiness and their spiritual hesitation. You're emotionally ready to leap, to commit, to surrender. But the response you long for doesn't come. And the longer the silence stretches, the louder the questions get in your head. Did I imagine all of this? Why do I feel them so deeply if they won't even speak to me? Was it all just one-sided? Scorpio, let me be clear. No, you didn't imagine it. No, this isn't delusion. No, you're not reaching into nothing. There is a connection, but it's stuck. Not because of you, but because the energy has bottlenecked. It wants to move, but it's waiting for clarity, courage, or divine timing to unfreeze what's locked. So what do? You stay in your truth. You don't beg. You don't chase. But you also don't betray yourself by pretending you don't feel it. Instead, you channel the energy inward. Use that fire that wants to move outward, and let it burn away the doubt inside. Let it purify your devotion to yourself. Because when the Eight of Wands is blocked, it's not a no. It's a not yet. And Scorpio, your gift is endurance. Your gift is to speak through the silence. To send messages with your eyes, your presence, your vibration. And let the universe carry the rest. One day when they're ready, they will hear the thunder that's been building inside your quiet. Let's go deeper. Part 7. The flame that scares them. From the outside they appear unshakable, confident, charismatic, in control. They speak with certainty. They know how to command a room, to magnetize attention, to wear a persona of strength. They may even seem like the kind of person who's used to being adored but never truly known. That's King of Wands energy. Someone who leads with fire, passion, presence, even purpose. But who, deep down, fears what will happen if the mask ever slips. And then you came along, and something shifted. You didn't just admire their fire. You saw through it. You saw the boy behind the armor, the girl behind the bravado, the soul behind the performance. And that terrified them, because most people fall in love with who they pretend to be. But you saw the whole thing, the unhealed parts, the contradictions, the shadows. And here's the twin flame paradox. They were drawn to you because you reflect their higher self. But being around you also exposes the parts of them they're still running from. So they pull back. Not because they don't feel something, but because they feel everything. You've activated a spiritual alarm clock they didn't ask for. A mirror they weren't ready to look into. A soul connection that defies logic, timing, and every relationship model they've ever known. The closer they get to you, the more naked they feel. Emotionally, spiritually, energetically. And when we peel back that King of Wands confidence, we find a whisper hiding behind the throne. I'm afraid you won't want me. If you see the truth, this is not insecurity in the traditional sense. This is existential fear. The kind that comes from a life of pretending, performing, or surviving. The kind that says, if someone really knew the whole of me, the messy, scared, haunted parts, they'd leave. But Scorpio, you don't leave. You don't flinch. You've seen worse in your own mirror. In fact, you love deeper because of the wounds, not despite them. And that's the irony. They think you'll run if you see their darkness, not realizing it's the very reason you were drawn to them in the first place. Because where others are afraid of shadows, you speak their language. But right now they're stuck. In the push and pull. In the desire to be seen. And the terror of exposure. So they stall. They ghost. They pretend not to care. But Spirit wants you to know. Their coldness is not indifference. It's self-protection. They're not afraid of you. They're afraid of what you awaken in them. The version of themselves they don't know how to become yet. So what do? You don't chase. You don't dim your light to ease their discomfort. But you also don't close your heart in bitterness. You hold your frequency. You keep walking in truth. And you let them decide. Will they rise to meet the fire they themselves called forth? Because love like this isn't about convincing. It's about remembering. And eventually choosing. Let's go deeper. Part 8. The weight of their silence, the depth of your knowing. Some people scream with words. Others scream with silence. And Scorpio, you've always been able to hear the silence louder than any sentence ever spoken. Right now, you're dealing with someone who has shut down. Emotionally, verbally, maybe even spiritually. No messages.
No updates.
Just absence. But absence doesn't mean disconnection. Because while they've gone quiet, their energy hasn't. You still feel them. In the middle of the night. In the space between your breaths. In the way your body reacts to music or memories you once shared. And that's what makes this harder. Because this isn't a clean break. It's a haunted stillness. Filled with everything unsaid. The High Priestess enters here. She is the guardian of secrets. The embodiment of sacred knowing. She holds truth but does not force it into form. That's you, Scorpio. You know more than they've ever told you. You feel what they won't say. You've sensed their fears, their desires, their hesitation, without needing any confirmation. Because your connection isn't built on surface facts. It's built on soul signals, electric and invisible. But now we also meet the Five of Swords, the card of inner conflict, self-sabotage, and fear-based withdrawal. This is what they're trapped in. They care. Deeply. More than they can admit, even to themselves. But their love is tangled with shame. With the fear of hurting you, or being hurt. With the belief that if they let someone that close, it will end in disaster. So instead of leaning in, they pull back. Instead of honesty, they choose avoidance. And instead of holding your hand, they hold their own pain tighter. You may be wondering, if they feel this too, why are they pushing me away? Because Scorpio, love isn't always soft for people like them. It's threatening. It makes them vulnerable. It cracks open everything they've spent years trying to hold together. They want to love, but they don't know how to receive love that pure. And so they retreat, not because you're wrong, but because you're too right. And you feel everything, but you say nothing. Because you've learned that sometimes silence is mercy. That trying to pry open a locked heart only makes it close tighter. That love cannot be forced, not even soul-level love. So you wait, not for a text, not for an apology, but for clarity. You stay quiet, not because you're confused, but because your knowing is so deep it no longer needs proof. But make no mistake, you are not passive. You are holding space. And that space, it's not empty. It's sacred. It's where transformation brews, where their soul can finally hear its own truth, because you're no longer speaking over it. And Spirit says, just because they're quiet doesn't mean they don't feel. In fact, the more silent they are, the more the connection is screaming in their bones. So hold your center, Scorpio. Let them come to terms with what you already know. Because silence in the hands of someone like you isn't absence. It's invitation. Let's keep going. Part 9. The innocence that sparked the storm. Started with a moment. Maybe it was a glance, a shared laugh, a strange feeling of recognition that you couldn't explain. Like you'd met them somewhere before. Not in this life, but somewhere. There was no declaration, no drama, just a quiet click in the soul. This was the full energy. Not the careless kind, but the sacred kind. The moment before labels, before expectations, before fear entered the room. In Scorpio, it felt like freedom. You let your guard down, not because you trusted them right away, but because something in you recognized that you could breathe around them. It wasn't intense in the beginning. It was easy. Too easy. And that's what made it dangerous. Because for someone like you, who has been betrayed, abandoned, dissected emotionally, ease can feel suspicious. But this person, they felt like sunlight on skin you didn't know had gone cold. They didn't ask for all of you, but somehow they found you anyway. In the smallest moments, the way they looked at you, the way they laughed at something only you would notice. the way they never asked you to shrink. And then came the Ace of Pentacles, the spark of something real. A seed, the beginning of what could grow into something lasting, something sacred. This connection didn't scream forever, but it whispered home. And that whisper, it echoed in places inside you that hadn't heard a sound in years. But here's where the story turns. That very innocence, that playfulness, that ease, awakened the storm, because what started as light began to stir your shadows. And there's two. Love, real love, doesn't just show us what we want. It shows us what's in the way. Suddenly, all the unhealed places, the fears, the doubts, the deep beliefs that say, I'm not worthy of this, started to rise. You weren't trying to fall. You were just trying to feel. But love has a way of unfolding itself whether we're ready or not. And for them, that light you brought, it was a mirror. One that revealed not only who they were, but who they were not ready to become. Because loving you would require them to rise, to meet you in truth, to drop the persona, to choose vulnerability over performance. And not everyone is prepared to walk through that door. So instead, the push-pull began. They inched closer, then backed away. They smiled, then disappeared. They flirted with the edge of something real, then blamed timing, circumstances, or confusion. But Scorpio, you knew. From the beginning. You weren't naive. You weren't projecting. You were responding to something your soul already recognized. This was never just flirtation. This was soul ignition. And even if they ran from it, even if they couldn't name it, you still carry the echo of that beginning. The spark that didn't lie. The seed that was planted. The innocence that started the storm. Let's go deeper. Part 10. The sleepless nights of the soul. Some pain doesn't shout. It whispers. It curls up next to you at 2 a.m., just as the world has gone quiet, and asks questions you thought you buried weeks ago. That's the Nine of Swords. The energy of restless nights and haunted thoughts. Of mental loops and invisible wounds. Of staring at the ceiling in the dark, asking yourself, was any of it real? Why did they stop trying? Did I expect too much? Or not demand enough? Scorpio, you've always had a complicated relationship with silence. Because on the outside it makes you appear strong, mysterious, unbothered. But on the inside, silence is where your emotions ferment. Where truth either blossoms or curdles. Where your intuition starts screaming in the voice of your own doubt. And lately, the silence between you and this person has started to echo. You've been replaying moments in your mind. Not because you're weak, but because Scorpio remembers everything. The way they looked at you. The way their voice softened when they said your name. The way your energy shifted when they entered the room. It wasn't imagined. It wasn't one-sided. But it was interrupted. And now you lie awake with a heart full of unfinished conversations. With a soul still tuned to a frequency that no longer speaks back. You haven't told anyone how much it hurts. Because who would understand the pain of a love that never had a name? You weren't together, but you were never truly apart. So you grieve silently, privately, spiritually. And here's what no one tells you about being a Scorpio. You don't just mourn people. You mourn possibilities, futures that never happened, timelines that flickered and died in the space between almost and maybe. But this pain, as real as it is not here to destroy you. It's here to purify you. Because each night you survive without reaching out. Each moment you choose truth over illusion. Each breath you take in the middle of the ache. You are becoming something more. You are no stranger to darkness. You were born to walk through it. But this kind of darkness feels different because it comes from love. And love was the one thing you thought would feel like light. And yet, even now, in this soul-heavy space, your resilience is speaking. You haven't collapsed. You haven't turned bitter. You haven't forgotten who you are. You're just tired. Not weak. Not broken. Just tired of loving in silence. But Scorpio, even silence serves a purpose. It gives you space to see clearly. It reveals what was yours and what was theirs. It teaches you that your emotions, though intense, are not your enemy. They're your compass. And this storm of swords you're walking through right now, it's sharpening your truth. So cry if you need to. Feel everything. Let the night carry what your voice cannot. But don't forget, dawn is coming. And Scorpios are always reborn. At the edge of the darkest night. Let's keep going. Part 11. the guardian of their peace. There's a kind of love that doesn't chase. It doesn't demand, doesn't cling, doesn't ask for constant affirmation. Simply stays. It stays quietly. It stays fiercely. It stays even when no one sees it, like a silent sentinel guarding the sacred. Scorpio, this is the kind of love you carry. And this is where the strength card rises. But not the strength that fights. Not the strength that conquers. This is inner strength, the kind that whispers, even if I don't get to keep you, I will never wish harm upon you. Even if I can't walk beside you, I will stand where you can't see and protect you anyway. You've become a quiet guardian in this person's life, not because they asked you to be, but because your soul chose to love them beyond outcome. Even now, when the communication has faltered, when confusion clouds the air, there's a part of you that would still shield them from pain if you could. You'd absorb their sadness. You'd transmute their fear. You'd take on their storm if it meant they could feel peace for just one day. This isn't martyrdom. It's Scorpio love. Pure, protective, primal. People often misunderstand your power. They think it's control. They think it's jealousy. They think you love to dominate. But the truth is, you love to guard, to protect what is sacred, to stand between the person you love and the darkness they don't know how to fight yet. You've likely never told them all the things you've done in silence for them, the ways you've held space, the prayers you've whispered, the things you wanted to say but didn't because you knew they weren't ready. That's real strength. Not yelling into silence, but learning to find your balance inside it. Not rushing in to fix them, but letting them fight their own battles while still holding them in your light. You are not weak for loving this way. You are not foolish for being the steady one. You are not naive for believing in something that doesn't show up in obvious ways. Because Scorpio doesn't love for attention. You love from instinct, from soul, from that deep, unshakable part of you that says, your peace matters to me, even if it costs me mine. But Scorpio, don't forget, you too deserve to be protected. You too deserve to feel safe, held, and seen. And if that protection never comes from them, then let it come from you. Wrap your own arms around your spirit. Be your own shield. Because the one who protects everyone else deserves someone who says, I've got you too. Even if that someone has to be you. Let's keep going. Part 12. The friendship that refuses to stay just friends. Not every love story begins with a kiss. Some begin with a laugh, with inside jokes, with long pauses between words that feel heavier than they should. And some begin with two people calling it just friends, while their souls whisper something else entirely. Scorpio, this was never just a friendship. It was a slow-burning truth wearing the costume of casual. A bond too deep to define, too complex to confess, too sacred to risk spoiling. Enter the energy of the Three of Cups. Joyful, safe, familiar. But beneath it, something trembling. Maybe they were the one who made you laugh when you were unraveling. Maybe you shared music, glances, long texts at midnight. You told yourself it was platonic because calling it love felt too dangerous, too soon, too real. But here's what makes it even more painful. You weren't alone in that feeling. They felt it too. You saw it in the way they looked at you. Like they were searching for something they'd lost in a past life and just found again in your eyes. You felt it in their hesitations, their almost confessions, their over-explanations. You noticed how they never said, I love you, but said everything else that meant it. This friendship, it was never light. It was dense with spiritual electricity. And even if nothing physical ever happened, you know it happened. In the soul, in the energy, in the space between the words. But then something shifted. Maybe it got too close. Maybe they backed away. Maybe you did. Because Scorpio, loving someone in silence is already hard. But loving them while pretending to be just friends? That's a slow soul death. You kept showing up, supporting them, celebrating their wins, being their safe place. All while knowing you were never just a friend. And when you tried to create space, they pulled you back in. Not always with intention, but with energy. A text, a song they shared, a moment of vulnerability when the walls dropped just enough for you to see the love again. And then they shut the door. It's a cruel cycle. Close, retreat. Laugh long. Friendship, but not really. So where does that leave you? Here in the liminal, in the aching beauty of almost, still wondering if they'll ever be brave enough to call it what it is. But Scorpio, you don't live at the surface. And you've never been good at pretending something doesn't exist just because it's inconvenient. You've already gone too deep. You've already memorized the way their energy feels when they're not in the room. You've already built altars in your heart for a love that doesn't speak its name. So maybe it's time to ask, do I keep holding space for someone afraid of their own feelings? Or do I bless what it was and walk towards something that doesn't have to hide behind friendship to survive? Whatever you choose, remember this. You weren't wrong for loving. You weren't crazy for seeing what was there. And just because it was quiet doesn't mean it wasn't real. Let's keep going. Part 13. The fear of losing what's safe. Not everyone fears love, Scorpio. Some people fear what love will take away. And right now, the person in your energy field is holding you with a strange kind of grip, not in their arms but in their emotional orbit. They won't come closer, but they won't let you go either. This is the energy of the Four of Pentacles, a heart that's clenched tight, afraid to lose, afraid to risk, afraid to change what feels safe, even if it's no longer fulfilling. They see your value. That's not the issue. In fact, the Page of Pentacles tells us they're still curious. They're still learning. They still feel the potential of what this could be. But they're approaching it like a child holding something fragile, with caution, hesitation, and a quiet fear that one wrong move will shatter it all. So instead of leaping, they stall. They offer crumbs of energy. A message here, a lingering stare there, a half-open door. But never enough for you to walk through. Why? Because you represent something too real. To love you would mean rewriting the script of their life, letting go of other people, facing old wounds, stepping into a version of themselves they're not sure they're ready to become, and so they stay where it feels safe, even if that safety comes at the cost of their soul's evolution. You might be thinking, if they know I'm what they want, why not just choose it? Because Scorpio, love is not always logical. Sometimes people would rather hold on to predictable disappointment than step into unpredictable joy, because the latter asks more. It asks for change. It asks for trust. It asks for surrender. And surrender? That's terrifying when you've spent your whole life in survival mode. So instead of reaching for your hand, they clutch their chest tighter, not out of malice, but out of fear. They want to keep what they have, the connection, the warmth, the unspoken bond, without risking what they know. Their independence, their emotional walls, their story. But here's the painful part for you. They don't realize that in trying to keep it safe, they're slowly suffocating it. Because love, when held too tightly out of fear, cannot breathe. And you, Scorpio, cannot keep dancing in a connection where you're always half invisible. So what do you do when they won't let go, but also won't let it grow? You reclaim your energy. You stop waiting for them to become brave. You stop shrinking to fit inside the space they're willing to offer. You stop mistaking emotional crumbs for spiritual commitment. Because even though your love is deep, you were never meant to stay stuck. Let them learn. Let them sit in the discomfort of almost. Let them see what happens when you stop orbiting and start rising. Because maybe, just maybe, it's the space you create by stepping back that finally forces their soul to step forward. Let's move into the final part. Part 14, the awakening, the return, the choice. There comes a moment when the soul refuses to sleep any longer. When the dream is no longer just a dream, it becomes a calling, a reckoning, a spiritual summons that cannot be ignored. And that's where we are now. The energy of judgment enters the story, not as punishment, but as awakening. This is the point in the journey where masks fall away, where both of you are called to remember why this connection was ever born in the first place, why it never quite let go, why even in silence the energy persisted. Scorpio, something is shifting, whether you felt it in your body, your dreams, or the sudden stirring of old memories. The universe is rearranging, the pause is ending, and as Eight of Wands re-enters the spread, this time upright, we feel the quickening, movement, messages, momentum. The energy that was stuck is starting to flow. Perhaps they reach out. Perhaps it comes as a sign, a synchronicity, a dream that jolts you awake with tears in your eyes. Perhaps the clarity comes not in words but in knowing. Either way, the wall is cracking. And through that crack, the truth is finally ready to bloom. But here's the twist. This isn't just about them returning. This is about you choosing too. Because you've changed, haven't you? This journey, the longing, the silence, the soul-splitting ache, it transformed you. You're no longer the person who waited in the shadows. You've grown. You've healed. You've remembered your worth. So when they come back, if they come back, it's not about going back to what was. It's about asking, does this love still align with who I've become? Because judgment doesn't ask for nostalgia. It asks for truth. Not do you miss me, but will you meet me in my wholeness? Not do you regret it, but are you ready now, really ready to rise beside me? And if the answer is yes, then this love may finally become what it was always meant to be. A union not of fantasy but of soul maturity. But if the answer is no, then this too is a gift. Because Scorpio, your story doesn't end with who returns. It begins with who you choose to become because of the love. The dream served its purpose. It awakened you. It taught you your own depths. It reminded you of the sacred fire you carry. So as the final message from Spirit comes forward, let it land softly. Sleep will no longer hide the truth. What is real will rise. And when it does, you must decide. Not from fear, not from longing, but from the power you've reclaimed in the fire. You are not the same person who began this journey. You are not waiting anymore. You are choosing. Let that choice be a reflection of your evolution, not your loneliness. The triangle is broken. The illusion is gone. Now only truth remains. In Scorpio, truth is where your power lives. Ending the final soul message. Scorpio, if you've made it to this point, it's because your soul already knew this wasn't just a video. It was a reflection, a mirror, a message disguised as a story. Somewhere along the way, this connection cracked something open inside of you. Not just longing, but memory. A memory of the kind of love that doesn't ask for permission, that doesn't follow rules, that doesn't care about titles or timelines. But now the choice is in your hands. Not theirs, yours. Will you keep orbiting the dream? Or will you step fully into the reality you now deserve? Because whether they return or not, whether they choose you or not, you are no longer waiting. You are walking forward. And here's the truth no one dares to say. Sometimes the deepest purpose of a soulmate isn't to stay forever, but to awaken the part of you that forgot who you are. So breathe, forgive, release. Not for them, for you. For the new life, the new love, the new peace that's finally making its way toward you. And now, Scorpio, tell me this. Was this just a coincidence? Or did your soul need this? What part of this message hit deepest? What truth did you feel but never say out loud? Until now, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. Because your voice matters, your truth deserves to be heard. And if this spoke to you, Scorpio, don't leave without subscribing to the Path to Buddha Wisdom, where we don't just read signs, we decode the soul. There's more coming, more truth, more power, more Scorpio medicine for your spirit, your shadow, your rising. Till then, remember, you were never meant to live small. You were born for depth, for transformation, for fire. And sometimes breaking the triangle is how you finally become whole.